Hidely ho to you one and you all, a frabjous day to the big and the small. I'm Mr. Sean, and this is Chimera Miniatures' official YouTube channel. We're coming back to you today with some more r/RPG horror stories. I am trying to be consistent and have at least 2 new videos a week. My goal is 3, though sometimes that probably won't be able to happen, but this time we are at least going to have 2 new videos this week, and I do thank you for joining me. I make these videos on top of my normal job as a way to promote my side hustle, which is of course Chimera Miniatures. I make custom tabletop miniatures for role-playing games, HeroClix, and I do have a line of not safe for work HeroClix miniatures. As stated in previous videos, I do take commissions. Right here I have some photos of what I am currently working on for a client, which are 2 different miniatures that will be made in the visage of Space Ghost from the popular cartoon series. Please check out my links, either buy a mini off of eBay that I've already created, or reach out to me directly to see if there's a custom commission you'd like me to make for you. And without further ado, let's get into today's r/RPG horror stories. Our first story today comes from MCC Thibbit, and is called Summer Camp Power Fantasy. A couple of years back, I worked at my university's summer camp for the arts as a counselor for high schoolers. I had a great group of kids under my wing who were excited to try D&D at the end of our 2 weeks together. I took the time to find a comedic one-shot, learn the rules of DMing, and made character sheets based on what class and race they liked the most. Everyone loved their characters except for the Wizard Camper. Wizard insisted on making his own character sheet, and I trusted him because he said he's played D&D before. I smell a that guy. Some background on Wizard. He was a very insecure kid who frequently made self-deprecating comments about himself. I and a few other counselors spent a lot of time building up his confidence and helping him make friends, and he was definitely flourishing by the end of our time together. We get to the one-shot night, and I finally see Wizard's character sheet. He was a level 3 Dragonborn wizard with a proficiency in heavy armor, had a lance, and had a secret familiar that would enter the story later, and more spells than any level 3 wizard should have. You see where this is going. It's too bad, man. You gave the kid a confidence boost, and now he's decided to take that newfound confidence and try and impress everybody with his super D&D skills. We not only see where this is going, we saw where this was going. He starts one-shotting all obstacles and opponents I throw at the party. I had to improv more enemies to give the new players a chance to actually engage in combat. I wanted to call him out, but I'd spent the last 2 weeks watching him come out of his shell. I didn't have it in my heart to stop him, so I kept adding new obstacles for the rest of the party, fudging rolls and ignoring hit points to keep the session afloat. After a session of laughs and groans, we get to the BBEG, and Wizard yells, "Now, Tony!" And he introduces us to Tony, an elemental familiar who is a mini black hole that conveniently snuck behind the BBEG during combat and was going to use a high-level gravity spell to crush the BBEG. OP, I know you said that you're new to DMing in this story, but it sounds like to me that you're not new to Dungeons & Dragons as a whole. I mean, when you saw that his familiar was a mini black hole elemental, as well as like just how overpowered his character was for level 3, you honestly should have seen this as for what it was, and you should have shut that down before the game ever got started. I mean, I know you don't want to crush this kid's spirit, but you were wrong to let it even go so far as to get to the table. It sounds like you know a little bit of what you're doing, like you've at least played before, so you should have known this character was overpowered. I mean, again, I get it, you're trying to build these kids up, but you're not just building this one kid up, you're a counselor to all of your campers. I give you credit for trying to boost the kid's spirit, but don't let him ruin everyone else's fun. It sounds like they were really excited for this, and but at the same time, you did do a good job of adapting and improving and just ignoring hit points if need be to make sure everyone's having a good time, because that's what a DM does. So, I mean, kudos on that, but again, you really should have stopped this way earlier than you have. And then, my brain broke. I just sat there for a minute in silence trying to think of anything to stop this from happening. I couldn't let him take away the climactic battle for the other campers, so I pivoted with absolute bullshit. As the BBEG, I claim to have secretly been a lich that, while taking damage from the gravity attack, was reassembling my undead body for the next attack. He didn't really talk much the rest of the session, but the other campers loved it and had an intense battle to finish out the session. Wizard, I know you aren't a bad person, and hope you're doing great things, but TTRPGs are a team sport, and power gaming won't make you any friends. OP, I gotta give you some major props for this story, man. You did everything right, beyond letting him bring that character to the table in the first place, but you wanted to trust the kid. And You pivoted, you made sure that everyone, well, the majority of everyone, had a good time, that everyone got to participate. Stellar job. Wizard, you do well to learn from OP, because TTRPGs are about having fun as a group, and while you think you're showcasing your skills and you want to impress people by how great you play this game, if you try to show off in D&D, all you're doing is ruining the fun for everybody else by trying to be the main character. You can't win D&D, and the fun is had through group experiences, not by carrying the entire team with your mega wizard. Can't judge you too hard, though, as you were an awkward kid that had trouble making friends, so I hope that you took this as the lesson it was, didn't let it discourage you, and I hope that you have become more socially acclimated and, as OP said, are doing great things, because you're not a bad guy, you just needed to learn about how to play D&D as a player, and not as the hero a little bit more. Best wishes. Our next story comes from Hit by Cars, and is entitled, Butt Stuff Ruined My First Campaign. This is titled Short and Not Safe for Work. I hate arbitrarily long stories on this sub that could be 2 sentences, so here it all is in 2 sentences. Our DM and Elven Ranger were dating for 2 years, but broke up 5 sessions into our campaign, and we never played together as a group again, 4 players plus the DM. I found out 2 years later that the reason for their breakup was that our Elven Ranger, female, wanted to have normal sex, but our DM, male, only ever wanted to be pegged, and she couldn't take fucking him in the ass so much anymore, so they finally ended it. Well, OP, I gotta say, you really made those 2 sentences count. Also, I'm kind of wondering, was your DM just gay? Like, your DM just wanted someone else to plow him in the ass, and what satisfaction does the woman get out of that? I assume they use some kind of strap-on device. I mean, if getting something jammed up your butt is your thing, no shame there, but literally you gotta be thinking about your partner. Like, wouldn't you rather just have a guy do that? He's gonna get off, you're gonna get off, but, making a woman do that instead of ever doing anything that might do something for her needs, you're just selfish, and if you don't think you're gay, you probably should consider being gay. Not to say that being gay is a choice, but you probably should just accept that you are probably gay. Though I am sure there is some kind of persuasion out there where your thing is just having a woman do that to you, and that's somehow what does it for you. But I don't think it's going to do much for the woman in the long run. You're going to have to, quote-unquote, throw her a bone every once in a while to keep her happy. Next, we have a story from Subject Barracuda824 called The Game That Ruined 2 Marriages. About 10 years ago, I played in a small group of mutual friends every other week. This wasn't my first campaign, so I had a good idea of the mechanics and character building, etc. On the other hand, one of the other members of the group, let's call her M, was a new player. M was new to TTRPGs, but very excited to try them. Fast forward about 3 months, M now has a character that is interested in another member of the party, played by W. M decides to have her character pursue W's character. After clearing it with him, all is well. Or so we thought. It turns out that although both M and W were married to different people outside of the party, they were spending copious amounts of time planning out character romances with one another out of game, so much so that they began to fall for one another. M confesses to W her out-of-character feelings, and W reciprocates. They both decide to leave their spouses. Thankfully, they are both childless. While the game continued without any more drama, this is still a reminder I have told other groups about the dangers of character bleed. Alright, this one could have been a lot worse. I do hope that M and W did the right thing and actually left their spouses before doing anything actually like cheating. Like, it's not a great situation, but hopefully they were respectful enough to their respective spouses to not actually act on their feelings before making the break. Since OP didn't mention them breaking up, hopefully they are still both together, which would be great for them, because if I found myself in this situation, I would be very worried that I was confusing my in-game feelings about their character and confusing how I felt about the person they were playing with them, the real person. Now, because I am obligated to mention my fiancé at least once a video, I will say that when we got together and we were talking, she did actually ask if I was confusing her with the character she played in game, which I was not, but again, that is a real concern if you develop feelings for someone based on their D&D character and not necessarily who they are. So This did destroy 2 marriages, but hopefully it did form one great relationship, which is, I guess, a small consolation prize. But the 2 spouses that got left probably don't see it that way. Next, we have a story from Cold Sheepherder 9157 titled, Why Did I Name the NPC That? Not Safe for Work. This one is obviously tagged, Not Safe for Work.
Just ever so mildly not safe for work. So I'm the forever DM of our long-established crew, and despite the gags, I honestly prefer it to playing. Building, setting up systems of politics and cultures, plot hooks, characters, it appeals to me. I always run extremely open, homebrew sandbox type games. Go somewhere, there's something to do. The world is your enchilada. But enough preamble. So in our current campaign, the crew was hired to go to a city aesthetically based on the Islamic Golden Age, with flintlocks to sneak into the dungeon below the Sultan's palace and bust out a guy on death row. Standard D&D stuff. They got it done easily. But then, they went off script. I was prepared for it. They always take an adventure in a direction I didn't see coming. The crew noticed while they were there that the city practiced the chattel slavery of Dragonborn. They did not take kindly to this, especially the Dragonborn bard and his elven druid wife. So they decided to stage a coup, as you do. They had discovered a large force of pirates not far from the city that equaled the men-at-arms under the government. This was for a plot hook they never saw, as they took it in a different direction. Instead, they plotted with the head pirate, a real piece of work and recurrent villain over many campaigns, to get his help overthrowing the government and installing him as the head of the new regime. Why they thought this was a good idea is beyond me, and in later adventures they decided he had to be overthrown too. Anyway, during the plotting phase, the crew was holed up in an abandoned farmhouse planning when a messenger from the Pirate King came a-knocking. With plot-relevant details the DM totally wasn't making up on the fly. The messenger was a Dragonborn. At our table, they can have wings, a tail, both, or neither. This will be relevant shortly. After he delivered his message, the Dwarven Paladin asked for the messenger's name. He did this for 2 reasons. 1, it's very in character for his polite paladin to do that. And 2, his player is an old friend and knows the weakest part of my game is coming up with NPC names on the fly, so he pulls this shit constantly to see what happens. I panicked. My mind went blank. Then I blurted,
Johnny Two Dicks!
Now why the fuck did I just say that? Why? The world will never know. I certainly don't. The game session derailed for a good 15 minutes as they dug into this. After harassing the poor guy, he finally sighed heavily, dropped trowel, and yeah, his name was accurate. We're all in our 30s and 40s, but the crew was giggling like 13-year-olds. They questioned this in character once the laughter died down, and Johnny defensively said some Dragonborn have wings or tails. He just happens to have 2 dicks. Lay off. It's a minor horror story, mostly of me embarrassing myself, but I will never live it down. That was over a year ago in this 2-year-long and going strong campaign, and I still hear about it every other of our weekly sessions.
I don't really have a lot of commentary for this one, but I will say that I chose to do the Sam Elliott voice before actually reading this story, but I think it was a good choice. I think I'm going to read one more before I call it a day. This story comes to us from user Bucket in a Bucket, and it's entitled, Bigot Almost Fireballs a Forest, then Traps the Party in a Burning Basement. There is a content warning for transphobia and racism. Tag not safe for work because of the content warning. This thankfully happened during Session 0 where the DM, smartly, wanted to test out how we work together as a party. We are having our proper Session 0 this Saturday with a replacement player who's one of my friends. TLDR, bigoted player shows murder hobo tendencies right from Session 0. Parties involved are me, a trans woman, DM, problem player, a wizard, fellow party member, sorcerer. Wizard was playing a stereotypical 18th century colonialist type, complete with their token being an image of someone from that era, white wig and all, with an "ew, dirty, uneducated peasants and uncivilized cretins" attitude to boot. Needless to say, this grated on all of us, but it gets a lot worse. He started off the session flying above our heads, refusing to touch the ground because it was dirty and had been stepped on by lesser beings. And then, when a sound came from the forest just outside the starting city, his immediate reaction was, "I cast fireball where the sound came from!" Needless to say, starting a forest fire right outside a major city was something neither I nor Sorcerer wanted to happen, and so we managed to barely stop this from happening. For the rest of this mess, Wizard repeatedly sassed at both of us for stopping him from committing arson. Shortly after, the party happened upon some ruins, where there was a trapdoor leading to a small underground room. One thing led to another, and we ended up being confronted by a couple goblins. The wizard had precast grease on the floor, and he proceeds to, you guessed it, cast fireball on them. At this point, I'd messaged the DM telling him I wasn't having fun, and Sorcerer probably did the same. Now this room was filled with flammable objects, and along with that, the DM ruled that the grease also caught on fire. The only one capable of flight was Wizard, so he escaped out the entrance, while Sorcerer and I, along with 2 NPCs, were trapped and were at risk of suffocating to death. Luckily, the rest of the party managed to dig our way out to safety through the basement wall, but at this point, we'd all had enough. Immediately afterwards, DM pulled Wizard to a private call and then booted them from the campaign, and was also happy to retcon everything that had happened during this session. Afterwards, DM told me that when in the call with just the 2 of them, Wizard had called me a trans slur. He had also called drow elves N-words. However, he didn't want to boot a player for seemingly no reason, so he waited for the party to tell him we wanted Wizard gone before booting him. Edit. Seemingly no reason meant in the context that the rest of the players didn't know what happened. His reasoning was he'd previously already booted a player for problematic behavior, so he didn't want to come across as a hard ass. Okay, before I give my input on this story, the proper slur for a drow elf is Dunmer. And that is from Skyrim, and Skyrim is awesome, but Dunmer sounds like a slur, so that's the perfect thing if you want to insult a dark elf. Don't bring real-world hate into this. Hashtag Skyrim is for the Nords. Okay, with that out of the way, I will say, if anything, I think DM was too lenient on this one. It's okay to be a hard ass when the people you're being a hard ass on are hate-mongering assholes. Bigotry has no place at the D&D table, except maybe for in-game bigotry if that's part of the plot and everyone's okay with it. As someone who grew up conservative and then has since shifted over to a more libertarian, moderate, like, I don't want the government messing with my personal choices mentality, I can say that I definitely had to learn that a lot of people that you will meet playing D&D are of the more alt community persuasion. There's something about not fitting into the traditional norms of Midwestern society that makes people flock to these tabletop role-playing games with other people, and as such, anyone who is a bigot and is okay with being that way has no place at the table. I had to boot a player from my own table for that, because in my table we are very much a gender and just empowerment positive space, and that's not because we're pandering to anybody, but because we want everyone to have a good time. And he didn't understand that. He was very much one of those, I'm a man, and the man is the dominant person, and it's the woman's place to serve the man type of people, and that just doesn't fit at the D&D table. So DM was right to boot this guy, but he was wrong to wait till someone else had to call it out. Like, if you see it, call it, boot it. You know, if you see something, say something, and don't let this stuff happen. Especially if your table is a bit more on the passive and socially awkward side, some people might just keep quiet rather than risk losing D&D because they don't know. Maybe you'll kick them instead of the other player. But you gotta, take care of your players, take care of your table. If someone is doing this stuff, boot them. Alright guys, and before we head out for the day, I'm going to read you some comments from some of my previous videos, because there's one person who has been very vocal on this channel since the early days back when I was getting like almost no views and no comments, and that is of course user Horny for Knowles. Horny for Knowles, I do want to thank you for sticking with the channel. I don't know if you mean the things you say or you're just trolling me, but I'm going to read them here, and I can't wait to see what you have to say next. These are all comments that they have made on my previous videos, really recently actually. All have happened within the past couple of days.
Imagine bringing your weird fetishes to the RPG table. Shameful. Speaking of breeding fetishes, what is the point of playing D&D unless you can play as Hogger the Gnoll, attacking villages, leaving the men hanging from nooses, and carrying the female off to be used as trash cans? The only self-insert that can be tolerated at the RPG table is the gnoll who inserts himself into various helpless NPCs. This story made me feel personally attacked. And not attacked in a good way, like when some noble set upon a peasant girl who wandered too far into the woods while picking mushrooms. Imagine thinking that it is the human characters from Pokemon that bring the sex appeal.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our video today. I want to thank you so much for sticking with me. Please like, subscribe, and please leave a comment. Tell me what you thought of the stories. And also, just check my links, go buy a mini, maybe contact me for a special commission. I'd love to hear from you. There might be a third video this week coming out on Friday, though I cannot make any promises. Again, I'm Mr. Sean. This has been Chimera Miniatures' official YouTube channel. I hope you alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye!